I've got 5 really good garden design tips here for you, plus 2 mistakes to avoid. I've been up to London to talk to the Charlotte Rowe Garden Design consultancy, to talk to Charlotte and her design director Tomoko Kawauchi about what you need to know when you're having your garden redesigned or trying to do it yourself. Charlotte Rowe Garden Design is one of the UK's leading garden design companies, and they've won many awards, including a gold at RHS Chelsea Flower Show. It's Alexandra here from the Middle Sized Garden YouTube channel and blog, and I'll put links to the Charlotte Rowe Garden Design and to any other resources we mention in the description below, along with timestamps, so you can jump to whichever part of the video you'd like to see most. If you're new here, the Middle Sized Garden uploads weekly with tips, ideas and inspiration for your garden. And if you'd like to see the videos when you open up YouTube, tap the subscribe button, they're free. And if you'd like YouTube to tell you when a new video is uploaded, then tap the notifications bell. Charlotte and Tomoko say that there are 3 things that are very important when people come to them to have their gardens designed. And number 1 is the taste and style of the owner. Number 2 is the architecture or the interior of the house. But number 3 is the function and the structure of the garden. That's very much the hard landscaping. It's things like paths and terraces and where you put somewhere to sit. It can be ponds, it can be paving. And of course, this is the really expensive stuff. It's the stuff that's difficult to change. So it's really worth getting it right first time. So garden design tip 1 is put function and structure first. Make a list of what you need to do in your garden, what you can see, where the sun falls, and anything else that you think is relevant.
Well, the first thing we do is just discover what the clients do, their lifestyle, what they need in a garden, their family makeup, etc. We work out the functionality of it. One of the key things is to look at the light as well and the way you use the garden. So if the area close to the house doesn't get any sun, there's no point creating a terrace there. We would much prefer to create a terrace somewhere else, probably further down the garden, to create a destination, a journey.
Reading on what's there on site is very important. Existing trees, could be where the light travels, it could be the nice view to look at, that's also important. You want to place the terrace wherever possible that the best view is. But also having a shade is important for dining terrace, for example. While if you're designing a seating terrace, you want to place it where it gets the westerly sun.
I used to write about interiors, and I interviewed a lot of interior designers. And with interior designers and garden designers, this issue comes up quite a lot, because we as amateurs, that's me and perhaps you, tend to get very fixed on a certain thing, like a piece of furniture that we definitely want to use, or a planting design, we want a particular colour scheme in our planting. And the rest of the garden we kind of lose track of. And it becomes about, what shall I have here, or where do I put this? Whereas the professional designer will take a step back, look at it all as a whole, and also see some of the problems, like, have you got sloping ground? What about drainage problems? Could there be flooding? And of course, what about services, things like electricity or water?
We can see the space in a bigger scale. While if you, as a client, you probably focus too much on what plants you want to have, or what furniture they want to have, I don't know. But as a designer, we see the space as a whole, one large space.
You obviously need training to do a proper scale drawing of a garden design. But if you just take a piece of paper and draw out what garden designers would call a bubble plan, just looking at where you might have the terrace, where you might have a seating area for a drink in the evening, storage, play areas, practical areas, and don't forget to include what you see, because a view isn't always rolling countryside. It could be a church spire, it could be a neighbour's tree, or it could be something you don't want to see, like an ugly street lamp. Tip 2, think laterally. Think across the garden, not down the sides.
Now, particularly if it's in town gardens and medium-sized gardens, quite often they're either too narrow or too wide or whatever. But something we do a lot is to break the space up laterally, so that the garden is not all seen at once. It's broken by either low hedging or planting beds or planted rills or gravel paths or whatever. So the eye then goes down the garden to the end, not too fast though, so the eye travels down in a way you're fooling with perspective. So it might mean, for example, like we've done here, putting planting beds close to the house, which then break the garden up, but then create a large space beyond for the garden to be used. So particularly if it's long and narrow, which often town gardens are, and decent size town gardens are often long and narrow, this really helps the space. Otherwise it just looks really long. If you put one huge bit of grass in, lawn, it'll look like nothing. The eye can't read how big the space is, or it thinks it's very small. So it's very important to break it up structurally and visually.
And if you look at this computer-generated design of a garden that they're going to do, you can see how the paving is actually wider than it is deep. And it's separated by some planting, and that planting can be trodden on. There's lots of little plants that will grow happily in cracks, like thyme or soapwort or some of the mints or even sedum. Tip 3, make your fencing, your walls or your trellis dark. Paint them dark, really dark, not white.
We do a lot of black walls. It's actually not black. It's very, very dark grey. Black's often a bit harsh. We do a lot of dark trellis, fencing, walls, bits and pieces. Dark colours recede and, they go away, so it feels bigger and wider. It's another way you make a garden look wider. And it's great for showing off plants as well.
As Charlotte explains, dark colours recede. White colours come closer to you. So you might think in a small garden you'll make it feel lighter if you paint a wall or a fence in a light colour or white, but actually what you'll do is you'll define the boundaries and you'll make it feel just a little more closed in. Garden design tip 4, bring the planting close to the house.
Often with low trees, because what that does is it brings the garden into the house, but it also punctuates the view, and it also creates the, ooh, what's beyond there kind of feel to it. It creates a sort of, a welcome, if you like. So we often do that in this garden here where we're sitting now. We did do that. We create maybe promontories of planting or promontories or something else, and then it interrupts the view and then your eye goes down the garden.
Now this brings the garden inside, and it means you can enjoy the lovely greenery, immediately. You can see it from the window, you're immersed in the garden. And also because you can't see the garden quite so well, the eye sort of wants to look a bit beyond. So it's a bit more about fooling the perspective. And this takes me on to tip 5, which is if you've got a small garden, make sure that it's predominantly evergreen.
We like to use evergreen because people look into all the year round interest. When the garden is small and then planting bed is small, we can't really have only herbaceous border because there's nothing there to see in the winter.
And of course, if you love flowers, you can always bring pots and containers in and really work that and change them over a few times a year. In Charlotte's own garden, she's got some evergreen close to the house, and I really love these balls. They're yew balls and beech balls, because box balls, of course, now, it's not wise to plant them because box tree caterpillar and box blight has really affected box in most of the UK and is spreading around the world. I've got a video on alternative to box which I'll put in the description below, but I just think this yew is lovely, and also the beech, which is not technically evergreen. Its leaves do die in the winter, but they stay on the plant, so this will be a lovely foliage contrast in the winter. Sometimes it can be really helpful just knowing what to avoid, because it gives you the opportunity to do lots else creatively around that, to just avoid that one thing. And the first garden design tip to avoid is don't centre the garden.
One mistake that people often make is they think you have to centralise a garden on a house. You don't. You should pick out 2 things. First of all, what you want to see, so the focus, the focal point. You also need to think about the symmetry of the house, or the shape of the house, and the way that the windows and doors work, where you come out into the garden, how you look into the garden. So we're not keen on, we very, very rarely centralise gardens. We might do if it's a detached house and it's very, Georgian and with everything perfect. But it's so rare that that's the case, that particularly in townhouses, English townhouses all over England and the UK tend to be asymmetrical. They don't tend to be centred. So we would change the garden according to that, so that you have a focal point and you have a view down. So for example, in my garden here, you can see the fireplace, which is there, set to one side. You can see it right from the front door as you come into the house.
Charlotte's own house is a terrace in London, and it's got the front door on the left-hand side. And although the back door is now a glass wall, it used to be on the left-hand side too. So she's taken the focal point from the front door on the left-hand side of the house, you go and look right through the house. In the garden, the main focal point is the fireplace, and that's on the left-hand side, lining up with the front door and what would have been the back door. I quite often get queries from people who say that they have trouble in sort of marrying up the architecture of their house and their garden, because they say, well, my house is quite modern, it doesn't really have any architecture. And if you feel that that's your house, then just think about where the doors and the windows are. What view do you see from the windows? What focal point would you like to see from the windows? And how do you line the front and back doors up? Rather than centering the garden on a sort of mythical, what might have been a central front and back door that actually never existed. And garden design mistake number 2 is don't make your borders too small. Particularly if you've got a small garden, it may be tempting to make the borders equivalently small. But plants need room to grow, and increasing the size of your planting space is so helpful. Here's a before and after of a house in Chiswick designed by Charlotte Rowe Garden Design, and you can see that the before, everything's neat and tidy. They've tried to make the most space for the path and keep the border narrow and use a very clipped hedge. And then afterwards there's a lush planting and a sense of richness and abundance, and in fact it almost looks bigger in the second photograph, because this lush planting gives you the feeling that it could just go on forever, and of course the borders are not very defined. And that's the advantage of having really big borders and lots of planting, is that it sort of blurs the boundaries of your garden, and it doesn't make it quite so obvious where it all starts and finishes. Garden designers do much more than just make things look pretty. They first have the grand overview and work out where everything should be. They draw up plans to scale. They get involved with how the services run, where you're going to run the electricity and the water, for example. If you've got a sloping site or any difficulties like that, they'll work with a surveyor. And of course they can manage the whole project. It's probably worth saying there's a difference between garden designers and landscapers, because landscapers actually do the heavy lifting. They build the paths and the walls and the pergolas. And some landscapers do have a garden designer in the staff, but many don't. So you can't necessarily go to a landscaping company and expect to get garden design out of it. If you're looking for a good garden designer, I'll put a link to the Society of Garden Designers in Britain, and there are equivalents all over the world. And you can usually find a member, and then that will certify that they have a certain standard of practice and ability. Check out other garden design videos in my Best Garden Design Videos playlist at the end of this video. And if there's anything you'd like a video on about garden design, any aspect of garden design you'd like to hear more about, then do let me know in the comments below, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.